So I rode my big wheel. She hit the big wheel, went under a car. I went under the car. Unfortunately, she was also drinking, so she didn't know she even hit me. And then I was under the car at that point. And the next thing I know is I'm looking at myself and I'm watching my eyes roll in the back of my head. And then the scene just kind of fades like a movie, like where it just fades to black and then it opens up again. And I'm sitting and I'm leaning on someone and my head is down like this. And I turned, still thinking, hey, who is this? I'm gonna ask him what happened. And when I turned and looked at him, it was a
Hey, everybody, I want to welcome everyone back to another episode of Soul Inspired. Today, I'm really excited. I have Stephen Noack with me today. He's an NDE, so he's had a near-death experience, and he's learned some things around healing as well. So we're going to talk to him a bit about that. So thanks so much, Stephen, for being on. I really appreciate you taking the time today.
hey, thanks for having me on.
One of the first questions I jump in with right away is if you can paint a picture, and you kind of mentioned a little bit, as I told you before, I don't really get too much information from the people I talked to at first, but I think you were quite young. But what was your life like prior to the experience you had?
I would say prior it was growing up in struggle and a lot of abandonment issues and I think a lot of us as kids maybe growing up around that time frame, your parents were always working. Um, so it was a lot of struggle. I can't say before I understood what I was going through as a child. But yeah, I was living in Connecticut and just living in a poor section of town, and you had to hand me down clothes that were too small, and you got made fun of, and it was one of those childhoods.
Okay, perfect. So it's pretty typical though for where you lived. You're just kind of like a regular family type situation, living your life. How old were you when you had your first
I mean, you could say it was regular, but it was also irregular. I mean, there was one point my father chased a guy out of our house with an axe. And so there was a lot of stuff going on that I didn't understand, it would lead to emotional instability later, you know?
Right. So some things were a little bit different from the average.
Yeah, yeah, you could say that.
Okay. All
A
right.
little
And
bit, but I don't put my journey of suffering in the forefront. You know what I mean? And
no,
it's obviously many people suffer, but
actually, because you said that though, I'm gonna just lean in a really quick direction. And what was your religious or spiritual belief system in your household at that time?
there was none. The only church I knew was I went to be a ring bearer, and the flower girl cried, and that was my church experience. And my family was not religious. I also wasn't religious growing up.
Okay. So no religious, no nothing that would be influencing you in any way.
No, I figured if there was a creator, he didn't like me. That
Oh,
was my gathering from my experience. And even following what I experienced that for, because how could I experience this wonderful, beautiful feeling and now all this darkness and pain? I figured if there was a creator, he didn't like me. And I figured that was just a memory of the past, what I experienced that for, and it was
wow.
done with.
So what happened at age 4?
So at age 4, I was run over completely by a vehicle. I was across the street from my house at the neighbor's house, and my brother came up to the sidewalk across the street, and he said, "We're going to the mall," and yelled it actually across the street. And I got super excited, shot down the neighbor's driveway in between two parked cars, and that's when I went into oncoming traffic, and a car basically ran me entirely over. My big wheel as well. I was driving a big wheel, like a small plastic tricycle for those of you not born in the 70s. Um, so I rode my big wheel. She hit the big wheel, went under a car. I went under the car. Unfortunately, she was also drinking, so she didn't know she even hit me. And I was that small at the time. So she continued until people stopped her. And then I was under the car at that point. The only thing that really saved me, from what I was told, was my big wheel itself that kept me from going under the tires because it got lodged in the back.
Wow.
So what I experienced was it's a blur. I'm shooting down the driveway, and the next thing I know is I'm looking at myself and I'm watching my eyes roll in the back of my head, and then the scene just kind of fades like a movie, like where it just fades to black and then it opens up again. And I'm sitting and I'm unconscious at the time or becoming aware or conscious, and I'm leaning on someone and my head is down like this. And I'm thinking my first thought is who am I leaning on? What happened? So I open my eyes and my head is still in the down position, leaning on this person who I think is a person. As I open my eyes, I notice they have hair that's almost touching the ground and that it's like silver and the same, almost the same color robe. I could see the bottom, just the bottom of the robe. I didn't see any feet. And I turned, still thinking, hey, who is this? I'm going to ask him what happened. And when I turned and looked at him, it was a hooded figure that had no face. There was only light where their face should be. And so for a moment, I kind of stopped and then just asked what happened. And they said, Stephen, you were in an accident. Everything is going to be fine. Just put your head down. And I did. And as I put my head down in this being's chest, I'm still looking at him in the face. I'm beginning to get pulled into the face, and I could feel it. I could feel myself sort of almost stretching out, if you will, into the light of this being's face. And I start to notice a scene. There's flowers, there's meadows. I mean, the most beautiful, perfect nature scene you could imagine, but with colors I've never still experienced in my life. Colors I haven't seen here before. The colors were actually alive. And I knew this, and it was like I was connecting to some sort of knowing at the time, and I'll explain that in a minute. And it's like the colors were alive. They were moving like their own beings. Um, Perfect flowers like I've never seen, colors like I've never seen. And it was like a scene where you would want to lay down in the sun and you didn't have a care in the world. And I noticed kind of in the distance, there's figures playing, doing something it looks like play. And I see that I kind of try to focus and I see it's an elderly man and it's a child. And it sounds strange, but they were far away, but they weren't. It's like they were right there, but they were in the distance. And they're playing and the children laughs. The child laughs. And when they laugh, this stream of energy just goes through the air, whatever that would be up there, through the atmosphere, and it hits me right in the center. And that's when instantly I knew everything came from this place. Everything will return to it in a circuit, and that no pain could exist there, no suffering, no hate, no anger. It wasn't that it didn't. It was like I instantly knew it couldn't vibrate high enough to form function. It was just too high of a frequency there. And I understood why, our hearts needed to be clean, or and this was happening kind of in the background. It's just like certain information where it's kind of telling you the parameters of whatever functions are going on. And it's all through gnosis. So I have this moment where I knew everything was one. Religion, really didn't matter. Like these were some of the things that were just hitting me at 4, obviously hard to digest, but a lot of it was downloaded for later. And I'll get to that in a bit. So I wanted to go there basically because I just wanted to be there. It was my home. I instantly knew it was my home. I came from there. And they said, Stephen, it's not your time. We have other things to show you. And it was like somebody just moved a curtain and the whole scene changed. And I'm standing in this kind of like room, and it's like a night sky without stars. Not black, but it was like a night sky without stars. And I start to see these lines. I start to notice there's lines going up and down. It looks like graph paper, or if anyone's ever seen the blueprint of a building, just looking at the blueprint paper. And they tell me this is the quantum field. This is how humans build their reality through their thoughts and emotions. And that's when they showed me this medicine wheel. And it was like I was observing the wheel, and in the middle there was this beam of energy. So it was like a wagon wheel kind of. There's this beam of energy in the middle. They start showing me and they tell me this energy in the middle is you as pure love when you incarnate, and then you spend your energy in relationship with the field and it circuits back through you, and this interprets your reality on an emotional level. So there's a relationship happening with the quantum field, and they're showing me, and I'm kind of observing it, and they're telling me this is you're spending your energy, and I'm seeing cords go out to the kind of like the outer rim of the wheel and then go back to me, and there's information being exchanged, and I understood innately that it was data and information, and this helped me later in my life when kind of releasing certain attachments to not take it so personal, that this was just data and energy. And at the end of these cords, as I'm trying to look and see, there's like tiny TV screens, and I realize these are memories. And then they tell me these are memories that are being stored in the field. These are experiences. And then they talk about a life review, basically. They talk about ascension. You can have your ascension while you're alive, and call all of these energies that are existing in different timelines, dimensions, and realities back into the moment of now. And then they talked a little bit about singularity, making the past, future, past, and present one, becoming a singular aspect of creator. And that would be the result of basically me clearing all the debt that I had created energetically, all the cords and wires that were crisscrossed. Now this is being downloaded for later in my late 30s, and of course I'll get to that in a moment. But a lot of it, just when I came out of this, I knew something happened, but it was like trying to remember what you ate for lunch last week on a Wednesday. You ate, but what did I have? So that kind of fades away. This wheel, these energies, these cords to this screen that's going around me, and I realize, these are my memories. Of course, they told me that. And the next thing I see is they're pointing to something in the distance, and they say, "This is your divine blueprint." Every single human being has this for restoration, to rewire themselves back to their original state of being as divinity itself, in material reality. So in other words, you can restore yourself with this. They were telling me it was the promise of the Christ. Okay. But the trick is, now it seems simple, but it's difficult, is to believe you are this, and to unsubscribe to all the identities you've given to the world. In other words, all the identities from programming, all the constructs, whatever it is as a limiting belief. Like, for instance, I started to realize in my journey, I wasn't just a worker. I wasn't just a father. I wasn't a son. Those were the things I was experiencing, that I was the energy playing the character. So they, back to what I was saying, the blueprint. So they tell me you need to attach your thought and your belief to this image and discard all the other images being created for you by the world. This is what's going to restore you. This is going to bring you back online. And as they're showing it to me, it's kind of in the distance. It almost looks like a credit card that's missing a corner, and there's circuits on it. And I just knew that this would rewire my system back to a state that was, I guess you could say, has more presence with creator, more in the moment of now, more singular, as opposed to having all my energy depleted and not enjoying my life. I understood there was an aspect of bringing all this energy into the moment of now, and then it's going to reward me. So claiming my divine blueprint, believing on that, is what would restore me. And obviously a lot of this information is going in because I would use it later. So the next thing I see is a triangle. Like, that kind of fades away. I see a triangle, and it's kind of like got electric lines going around it. And they tell me this is Heavenly Father, this is Divine Mother. Make the three one or two one, and they'll have a son. And this was the Trinity, Father, Mother, Son. And they showed me this circuit of this energy coming down through my crown, this energy coming up, and I understood that was my thought, my breath, and Divine Mother, Divine Father, and that they were having a son. They were literally they told me I had a sun in my center, a singularity, if you will. So that it was actually, the narrative was really that restoration, that ascension, that return, using that Christ that was within me. They talked about activating that sun when it was time, that they would return when it was time. So they showed me eventually how to connect to the Trinity, but I don't want to go too far ahead before I stop. But I understood that it was a circuit. There was some sort of, okay, I got to bring these together, and then something's going to happen.
Okay. First of all, thanks for sharing where we're at now. It seems like this keeps going. One thing I found fascinating about your story right away is the amount that you've retained, the amount of knowledge. Now, I don't know if you would retain that right after you woke up at age 4, or if this was what came over like years of your life of remembrances. I don't know if is that fair to say?
No, this was the memories started to return around like 11, 12. I tried to talk to people about it, and I realized really quickly that it wasn't a good thing. It's going to make me more awkward, more weird. I suppressed that,
Right.
and kept it to myself as they kind of grew. And there was more, and there was more, and there was more. And I was kind of like, at first, like, yeah, something did happen. I feel vindicated because I knew something had happened. So now, as I'm starting to get the memories in my puberty, I guess that's why it was happening. I'm not sure. I felt sort of self-vindicated, but I couldn't share it with anybody.
Right.
So it was about age 35, when I had to go in for a surgery on my elbow. I had been run over by a car. I had numerous car accidents after that. I rolled a car over at 75, 5.5 times.
Wow.
Yeah, 3 people in the vehicle flew out as the car was rolling.
Oh my gosh.
So how anyone survived? I mean, I know now deeply how it happened. I was protected, but the logical mind says nobody should have survived that. So I'm having a surgery for an elbow, a piece of bone that was in my elbow from that accident. And I'm feeling very anxious and panicked. And I'm like, I don't want to go through with this. I get up, and I hadn't had medicine yet or anything. This was like very first. They gave me saline. They were coming back with the medicine in a bit. I got up and I went to pull the line out, the saline line. And all of a sudden, this energy started at my feet, and it was like the warmest, calmest, most loving, safest place I had ever been. And it started at my feet, and I could literally feel it encapsulate me all the way up. And it went around my head, and I was literally sitting up at the time because I was about to leave. And this energy just sat me down, and the voice said, Steven, put your head down. Everything's going to be fine. Exactly what they said at 4. And then that was it. My reality was done after that, dude. I tried to go back to work. I started to experience psychic things. I started to hear people's thoughts, feel energies. It just caused, like, these 2 moments came together, and boom.
Yeah. The only thing that I've ever related and I've talked to a few people about was when I was a kid, I'd walk around grocery stores and I would feel everyone's energy. And we're talking like age 5 or 6. I'd be walking with my mom and I could feel like, oh, that guy just got into some kind of argument. Oh, that person, like they're agitated by something. That person's hungry. Like whatever the feeling was, I was feeling it. And
Mm-hmm.
I thought that was normal because I'm only 4 or 5 or whatever age. And then I would start to kind of bring that up, not to my family, but to friends, and they'd like kind of look at me like, "What are you talking? What are you talking about?" So I was like, "Oh, okay." So you started experiencing that plus a bunch of other things. It seems like things started kind of
Mm-hmm.
wide open at that point.
Yeah,
Um,
it was within a matter of a week after that surgery when I started to see things moving around me, and I thought at first I was being haunted. Because I'm like, what was that? What was that? What was that? And here I am just working at GameStop. I'm a store manager.
Mhm.
I just want to be left alone with this stuff. I go back to the surgeon. I ask him because I was so worried. I said, "What did you do to me, dude?" I literally walked into his office and I was yelling at him.
Oh, wow.
All of a sudden, I could feel there was a spirit there. There was a spirit there. There were energies here,
Mm.
and I didn't know what was happening. So it was right after the surgery. It was like the only place I could go. And naturally, they thought I was nuts. So this caused me to retreat a bit until I had these beings show up in my room, and I'm like, okay, I could literally feel the whole pressure of the room, the pressure of my body change. I didn't see them at first, and I assumed that's probably because they didn't want to freak me out. But they started speaking to me, and they said they were from the Galactic Federation, that I was part of some divine council of nine, and that they were here for ascension and the evolution of humanity, and that I was a part of that, and talked about a few other things. And I'm like, yeah, whatever, dude, go away. And never heard of this stuff. Never heard of Galactic Federation, never heard of Arcturians, never heard of any of that language. I went, immediately picked up my phone and started looking it up. And I'm like, yeah, maybe it's real. And so, and the reason why I told him to leave was because at the time I was starting to experience seeing those things move around me. And slowly but surely, it was energy. They took the form of silhouettes. Okay. Some were dark, some were smoky, some were lighter, but they were just moving back and forth, back and forth. Still to this day, sometimes I'll pick them up. And at first, I'm like, okay, I'm being haunted. Something's going on here. So that's why I was telling the Galactic Federation or whoever that was, leave me alone. I was kind of freaked out at that point. So as these things start to take shape in the silhouettes, I'm not sleeping. I'm starting to now engage them and speak. And a lot of what they're saying to me is not nice as I'm telling them to leave and you don't belong here, et cetera, et cetera. They're saying you're a POS, you're never going to be good in your life. A lot of the things that I experienced telling myself growing up that I would
Mhm.
never be any good, all these things. And then I realized, bam, it hit me, instant download, that I was in the wheel and that I was seeing my quantum projections. This wasn't happening to me, this was happening through me. It was being
Wow.
transmitted and then distortions placed around me. And instantly I knew I had to tune my mind, my thoughts, and tune my emotions. And then that, whole divine instrument deal where the light was already flowing through me, but it was being distorted by something. It was being distorted by the cellular memory I was carrying, the trauma I was carrying.
Mhm.
So I figure out these silhouettes are me. Um, Discharge them, start shadow work, going into nature, things like that. These beings return. They're telling me more about how we're a biological machine and we're going to evolve and how we process and store data for embodiment. Because this is really the old system is download it, create darkness, reflect on it through situations and experience, as opposed to having it go through your heart. So now, I've rewired my mind and my heart to send all the signals to be discharged through my heart before they speak to my body. I don't want my pain stored in my body. I want it to go through my heart. Take all this data, all this information that's not love, and really, as a conscious creator, order it to go there. So it took me a while to get to that space. The after effects, uh, gosh, it was there was during that time where the beings were showing up and learning how to discharge this, and they're kind of teaching me. I would wake up and see a ball of light in my room. Um, and at first I'm like going through the motions. I'm like, am I awake? Am I asleep? Is there a lamp there? Because I was, again, a normal person just trying to function at a job
Mhm.
and hold a family together at the time. So the lights would start to come in the room. Um, there was an experience where I was sitting out on the lawn and watching the sky. It's kind of evening time. I'm giving gratitude and thanks. And all of a sudden I'm lifted out of my body, and these beings start speaking to me again and teaching me how to discharge energy, cellular memory, how to quantum leap, how to get into that knowing that things already are. So they're kind of helping me prepare, heal myself, and then would teach me eventually how to heal others. But they're speaking to me about how we're a biological machine, about how I'm going to download information into my body. Whatever I believe is going to be downloaded, whether it's worthy or unworthy. It's going to go down. It's going to create an embodiment, and that we have a Tesla coil going from like a crystal here down to our heart, and it's a frequency oscillator, and it's going to oscillate depending on whatever information I feed it and create the character I want. So they're kind of just showing me what's behind the scenes, and teaching me that I had a quantum generator in my chest, that there were things that are harvesting our quantum energy in other realms when we give away our identity, when we give away, seek the need for approval and validation where it's already been given. There's a gap. So they were showing me how to close these gaps, bring myself back into the present moment. And I don't know if I should pause probably before. Oh, dreams, the dreams of being on the ships, waking up sweating and sweating and sweating, different nights, weeks apart, same ship, over and over and over. And
You're
kind of
referring
some of
to
the things.
are you referring to a UFO?
Yeah, yeah, you could say it's a
UAP?
UFO. I don't like to say UFO because
Yeah.
there's so much attached to it now. Just like I don't like to
Right.
say psychic, so much
Right.
attached to it. But yeah, it was a ship. It was a UFO. I had a white suit. I was entirely bald, no hair, as I was there, and it was different weeks apart, different nights, but the same ship in different areas. I'd be in a medical area. I'd be in this birthing center, of like these starseed children. And that's when I started to get memories of logging in to this experience and started to realize that I was the energy playing the character. A lot of other things came with that. The quantum leaping, realizing that I was my future self guiding my past self in the present moment. That I
Okay.
was no longer linear.
Right. Okay. Wow. This is in depth. This is really interesting. I'm loving this, by the way. You've said in past chats, you just keep going, and you like when people ask questions, but like the listener, me being the first time hearing you talk about this, I just want to sit here and listen to you the whole time. I want to hear what you've gone through because it's fascinating to me. I mean, this is why I do what I do. But I've been kind of making notes and writing down questions, and I have some questions for you if you don't mind us jumping
Sure.
into some rapid fire questions type thing. The first thing is, well, actually, I'm just gonna say this because this was at the end of what you just said. You said in these visions, or not visions, they were experiences that you were having when you were on the ship and you were bald. So you're saying that you were probably uh your future self, you know, whatever age that
Yeah.
would be, 65, 75, whatever it is. Were you older at that time? You feel like maybe you were older, or do you think this was a different realm? Because I don't know. I talked to so many different
Uh,
people where we don't really
yeah, I'm
understand
not
that.
really sure. I would
Mhm.
say I can't relate my age to it because I'm energy.
Mhm.
So it's like it's hard to put an age number. Hey, I was this old when I was there, but I feel like I'm thousands of years old.
Right.
It's like to go from being somebody who's just hating their job, just going to work and getting by and not believing in any of this, to all of a sudden having all this, and I'm praying to God. Okay, so now I'm questioning my sanity. I'm at work. I'm starting to hear people's thoughts. I'm starting to feel their emotions. Then I start feeling their hunger. And that was a fun one to figure out because I would eat lunch, be entirely full, and someone would walk in and I'd be gut wrenchingly hungry. So it took quite a while for me to really get up to the bravado to ask someone, hey, are you hungry? But I did because I needed to figure out what was happening. And sure enough, everybody said yes.
Yeah.
So I'm starting to also feel emotion. So I'm crying, I'm laughing out of nowhere, and I can't control it. In the middle
Mhm.
of work, as I'm working with somebody, it's like I start crying, start laughing. So eventually I had to leave the job. But before that, a woman had fallen outside my store, and she was an elderly woman. She landed on the cement. She was in pain, obvious pain. So I tell people, whoever's next door, go call EMTs. I was the first one to see it. And for some reason, I put my hand on her back and I felt my hand get warm. And she looks at me and she goes, I'm all warm and I don't feel any pain. And I was like,
Wow.
that freaked me out, dude. I went
Right.
back to work and I couldn't stop thinking about it. That plus the other things that were now adding up. So after I leave work, I started to go to all these churches. I went to every church I could possibly find to talk to somebody because I was losing my mind.
Yeah.
Um,
Yeah. Yeah.
and
Sorry,
on
go
the
ahead.
way there, I stop at the gas station to get gas. I get in line. There's this father and son standing next to me. They don't have anything in their hands. He turns to his father and he says, can I get this peanut butter cup? There you go, Reese's. There's a plug. Can I get this peanut butter cup? And father says, yeah. He goes, he grabs one, and he goes back to his father. And then the same thing happens again. And he only had one. And I was like, same exact thing. Can I have this? Yeah. And I was like, that was weird. So I left, got in my car because it was right outside, walked out to the pump, got in my car, started the car, and it was a radio contest. And the woman had just won. And she's talking about the answer with these guys or whatever. I don't even remember what the answer was, but they're laughing. All of a sudden, the phone's ringing on the radio. The phone starts ringing and it's her. And then they ask her the question. And I'm like, I just heard the answer. So then I was like considering checking myself into the hospital. There's some missing time piece here or something.
Wow.
And then that's, following that was the I am experience.
Okay, let's
I
get
don't know
into
if you
that.
want to ask anything
Yeah,
first.
let's get into that first because I do have a lot of questions. So this is I'm going to try to get these through these. So you were jumping through almost like quantum.
It was almost like my energy was faster than my body was or something. And it
Right.
was like I was picking things up before they were happening or something.
Wow, that's fascinating. The other thing is when you were talking about the emotion, like feeling people's emotions. That's the one thing as a coach right now. I'm a music coach and I can pick up when something's going on. Like that, they come in and I'll say, "What's going on?" And they'll be like, "Nothing." And I'll be like, "Oh." And then it
Mm-hmm.
keeps hitting me. It's like waves of like something and I go, "No, I'm serious. Like, what's up?" And they're like, "Nothing. I like everything's fine." By the third time, crying or whatever it is, like
Yeah.
yes, this is going on. So it's like, and it's almost like I'm at a point now at my age where my, like, even if they say no and I get that urge to keep asking, I have to keep asking. I'm like, yeah, they might want to walk away and never talk to me again. But if I don't do this, I'm doing something wrong. Like I have to, because I
Mm-hmm.
can feel the emotion. So that's like a Claire, I don't know what that is, Claire something, where I can feel that. And I don't get too in deep with that stuff. I let all my guests tell me their crazy stories, but I feel I haven't had an NDE. I haven't had anything experienced like that, but I do know that that's something that's just always been there with me. Um, Jumping back a little bit, okay, because you went through a lot, and when you were hit by the car and you closed your world closed and then you woke back up and you're with this being or whatnot, this hooded figure, and you were I you're really good at describing things. The way you were describing how you were like kind of like
Yeah,
almost
it's like I was being sucked
you were
in
like
like this.
merging inward into the face, and then you've seen the meadows and the colors and things. Now, would you, a lot of NDers would refer to that as like heaven, like a heavenly realm. Would you refer to the same thing as that?
Yeah, I would say so. I would say it's an end and a beginning. It's an alpha and omega. Everything is going to circuit back through it. And I later understood how to find that feeling again now and how to circuit everything back through it now so that I didn't have to wait and I could be pain free. And now I am after all those accidents and broken bones playing sports. I'm
If
free
you
now because I created heaven within myself with my mind and my heart and my energy.
Wow, but at that time you were visually seeing this, right? Because you said
Yeah.
things were alive. You said that you've
Yeah.
seen colors you had never seen before. How,
Yeah.
I'm going to ask you this question. How real did that feel in regards to this? So you and I talking, was it as real?
It was like going from the very first television set being this world to the TVs we have now being heaven.
Okay.
It was an ultra 4K experience, vivid. more alive than I have ever been alive. The feelings, the colors, the vividness, it
Mhm.
was an increased richness of experience and more alive than ever, and getting back to that feelings, what made me feel that now, be more alive and resurrect now.
So your reality broke wide open, and it was as if I always stated, it's kind of like if we're watching a movie that is not as real as us sitting on a couch, right? So now like
Right.
we are the
I started
movie.
to understand that I was the observer of the experience, that I was playing this character, that I was in a quantum video game, if you will, that
Mhm.
ran on energies and oscillated.
This is probably why a lot of people, when they do have the NDEs and they go back here, they are so upset so many times because they're like, why did I what why did I have to come back to this when there's that ultra reality? Like what would I why would I just stick myself in front of a television screen and watch a movie for 100 years as
Oh,
opposed to
for
going,
sure.
and that's
I
probably the
think
feeling.
especially when you're older too,
Mhm.
because at 4 I had no sense. It was just like, okay, and I honestly thought it was a memory. This is just something that happened to me in the past. It's done. No reason to talk about it.
Right.
But
And
when
at
you're
age
older, I'm
4,
sure.
yeah, and
Yeah,
when you're at 4 or 5 years old, I'm sure even I and we didn't really get into what happened when you woke up from it, if you were in hospital, all those things. Like I don't know what you were thinking right away, if you had any memory at all. But
it
even
was
if you
almost like knowing something had happened and you're trying to grasp, but you can't place what. It was like
right.
my entire being. I knew that I was somewhere else, that something different than an accident happened, but I couldn't recollect what.
I think one of the most difficult things about being really young and having an experience like that is you would think, oh, everyone does. Like that's just part of my reality at the time. I'm not saying you did, but I could see why. Because when you're a kid, you're just learning life. You don't
Yeah,
know what's different. And then as life keeps going, you go, okay, no, maybe this, maybe there's something more to what happened. And then as soon as you started having those memories, you're like, oh, this is a bit different.
yeah,
I'm not sitting around on the weekend with my buddies drinking a beer and talking about how we went to the other side of the and come back. Like you
right.
don't. It's just not a normal thing that people talk about. It is more now. It's becoming shows like what I'm doing and what other people are the information you're putting out. It's making it more normalized. I always say 100 years ago, we'd probably be all sitting in a white jacket in a room, right? Because
And,
it's they don't know how
and
to
it's like,
respond.
what else goes with it? Okay, this happened. Yeah, and so I'm like, all I'm gonna do is place this stuff outside, and it's gonna disturb people. Like, there's
Mhm.
got to be more to it before I could talk about it and share it. And the more to it was them showing up again and teaching me how to heal, how to connect, rewire my system, and then show others how to rewire their system so they can create what I call as a direct current as opposed to the alternating current, or what they call it's a direct current. It's a fully grounded state, a 0 point, and this releases you from the matrix, from the trauma bombs, from all the constructs of false identities. So
And
yeah,
you've learned how to do that through your own healing and through helping others.
yeah, I do it pretty much every day with clients around the world, and we work through quantum entanglement. So I can do it anywhere, and the big part of it is I can do it because they were already loved before they came here. And it's just a matter of getting their system to remember and kind of rewiring some things back in the center through quantum entanglement. Um, but
Right.
yeah, I do it really anywhere. I did some speaking events in North Carolina. I'll be at the IANS conference in Phoenix this summer, and I'm going to be in the healer room, so that'll be cool.
Oh,
But
that's
yeah, I
cool.
mean, throughout this process, my family thought I was crazy, wanted me to see a shrink when they first came back. Um, and this was many years ago. They're much different now, but it was a very being alone process. I felt very lonely and isolated when this started happening, and people started judging me. And I'm like, here, I'm going through the hardest thing and probably the most monumental thing in my life. I need you guys. But a lot of people, I think, were afraid because I was, just quantum, God,
Right.
creator.
Yeah.
And
Well,
I'd never been like that.
it puts you at the absolute utmost idea of what a minority is because like I said, not everyone's experiencing it. I don't know why I believe this or feel this. I think this is going to keep ramping up. I feel like
Yeah.
Something's thinning, because if you look at it from, if you were to step back and look at just our timeline in the last couple hundred years, the
Hmm.
amount of information coming out, right? So if you just look at that alone, well, it's just like adding mathematics. If that keeps going in that direction, this is going to become something of the norm at some point, 200-300 years from now. I can't see how it wouldn't be just a normal everyday thing. And who knows where we'll be. I'm sure you have your ideas and thoughts, and maybe you've seen things. Because I'm gonna get into that. I
Oh
gotta.
yeah, they're already in the quantum field. I've already had communication through the field because of what I do with et cetera, et cetera. Not sure if I should say that, but not much. It was very brief. And it was when I was going through a process of purifying my consciousness, making conscious and subconscious one, so that my lower energy, cellular memory stored in some subconscious mind and the lower programs were no longer conflicting. We're talking conflicting drives. As soon as I get that out of there, then I control both. That's when things started to reveal themselves, when I went through that making positive and negative one.
Right. You mentioned at one point, this is something I've heard. I want to cover this now. There's sometimes different things come up in the episodes where I want to address it, and I feel like this is a good one to
Hmm.
address. You said something about religion doesn't matter. You just said it out of, in quotation. And I'm always looking at that as, because I've heard that you're not the first person to say it, and that's why I'm bringing it up. And I understand what you mean by that. I understand what
Yeah,
you
let
mean
me
by that.
reiterate. Religion does matter, but not all the religions have the only truth. They all have a sliver of truth, and each one of them has a fragment of God in it. So
Right,
when I
right.
say that, I mean, I don't need this to find creator. It's within me. It's a frequency, it's a feeling, it's an embodiment.
Yeah, I can understand that. I've had different comments on different videos from different religious individuals, okay, and they have different opinions on things. And that's fine. Everyone's got their own opinion, and I respect each opinion. The biggest thing I see is in religion, I think it does create community. I think that's a good thing. I
Hmm.
think it creates that idea that we are bigger than what we think we are. So those,
Absolutely. Community gathering, having a
yeah.
family beyond your family, that's all important. But as far as leading people
Mm.
to really unifying their energies and escaping their bondage, there's not much of that.
Right, and the separating that religions can do too. I mean,
Yeah, the guilt, shame,
yeah,
trauma. I work with people who've been in religious cults, locked in the basement by the prophet that these people are worshiping.
yeah.
And so I've dealt with a whole realm of issues.
You were showed a medicine wheel, and you were shown that you were in that middle of the medicine wheel, right? And that
Hmm.
your
And my thought would go to my heart and be broadcast to the field and cycle back through me.
and these are things that you were shown at when you had that accident at age 4.
Yeah,
See, that's incredible because I mean, at age 4, you're just learning how to ride that tricycle
dude,
kid.
I'm just
And
standing there going like, uh-huh, uh-huh,
right,
uh-huh. And
right.
it's going into my system apparently for use later when they returned and started talking about the Trinity and the triangle
Yeah.
and the rewiring myself to a 0 point.
And you were shown that you can have ascension while you're incarnated.
Yeah, we can do our life review now. We can ascend, and that's what Jesus was trying to show us. He was trying to show us how to make the two energies one. Once I overcome the self and begin to alchemize that, um, then I'm no longer at war with the world.
And that overcoming yourself has to do with following your own blueprint.
Yeah, connecting to your divine blueprint. In other words, believing that I am the image of creator. And I mean really believing and then working that belief into a knowing. So when I work with clients, I have them start small. Just work with the feeling of belief itself and then see what subjects you can apply it to because you're learning how to reprogram your system. So a lot of it's been about, hey, you're a computer, you're downloading data all the time and processing data. It needs to go to the correct place or it's going to build up and cause pain, emotional suffering. It's going to have mixed realities and wires. So I wanted to get out of that because I got sick and tired of being sick and tired at one point in my life. As I mentioned, I think before we got on, at the time I was working at GameStop, man, I was on pain medication for all the accidents I had. I was miserable. Darkness, didn't want to be here. And these energies show up, and I realized very quickly that that feeling I felt of the place I went to at 4, where I had no pain, no suffering, that's happening now while I'm alive by engaging with these beings. So I can recreate that. I can get back there.
Right. And that was okay. So you're basically saying that we need to reconnect with our blueprint of who we truly are and not be distracted by our programming.
Oh, yeah, that's going to eliminate so much interference to say, no, I'm this, hold the line. Anything coming along, because the world's going to come along and try to label you. It's going to try to program you. Say you're this, you're that, you're not enough this, or you're not enough that. Without that foundation and knowing of self, it's going to be very easy to push you out of the present moment using your trauma, using your emotions. So they taught me how to correct my inputs, outputs, gather a charge in between, and then I'll choose when to spend it. No
Right.
situation is going to decide for me.
So some people might hear the way you just even said that and think, I have no idea what that means. So from a regular day-to-day person going through life, they're stuck in this place of pain, suffering, whatever it might be, maybe bad relationships, bad jobs, whatever it is going on. What is the first step someone would take in trying to get to that place where they're connecting to their blueprint and not the distraction around them? What would be the just one solid first step for them?
I find what most clients are missing is most have had knowledge of meditation, done a little bit of meditation, but what most are missing is speaking to their body, speaking to their pain. And I have clients, I just worked with one yesterday. She's like, I was on a hike and my legs started to hurt and I spoke to it and it went away. Thank you. And she just sent me, because we're not taking back that space. What we're looking to do is interrupt the communication of neurons between my brain and my body. Hey, if I'm the body of the Christ, then I have a right to claim that space through the Christ. That's my neural pathway. I want it. In other words, I'm stubborn. And I was stubborn because I was in so much pain and I was tired of suffering. And I had had enough. So, speaking to pain, speaking to ailments, speaking to emotions, thank you for what you're teaching me, but I don't identify with you. I'm already whole.
Right.
I'm already validated. I'm already approved. Now, this is going to put in the parameters that keep us from stretching out, searching for these things. And that's when our system gets unhealthy.
Yeah. And I have a strong belief in the science of things too, getting proper vitamins, things like that and all that. But
Yeah.
there's kind of this mix that we have to have. And we're almost forgetting completely that we're also this other piece, right? Like we can, like you said, speak to your body, talk to your body, the mind body connection, as some people call it.
Yeah. If I don't program my consciousness and my parameters, then the world's going to do it for me. They're going to push past them and I'm going to feel violated, or I'm going to be stretched and pushed and pulled. And that pushing and pulling, light and dark, have good times, bad times. It doesn't have to be that constant up and down. We can ground ourselves. And that's the direct current as opposed to the alternating current, where we're very linear. uh, Shame, guilt, regret, fear, worry, stress, anxiety. These are all pulling my energy out. It's dissipating all of my potential that I have.
I'm a strong believer in that if we're not finding our purpose and our, I guess in your case it's being connected to that blueprint, right? If we're not in alignment with our purpose and our what we're meant to be doing here, that I believe leads us into illness and sickness and disease and all these
Yeah,
different
for
things.
sure.
Do you do you agree with that? I
I would
feel
say
that.
my purpose is for people to feel the love and the redemption that I felt. And as long as I do that, then I know I will complete what it is I have to complete here.
Mhm.
But yeah, I agree with that.
The Galactic Federation, what did they tell you? Did they give you any information?
Yeah, I mean, a lot of it was about the ascension and the evolution of how we process and store data in our bodies, and the alternating current system, where we need to create this shadow, and it's going to teach us through an experience or pain. We no longer need to do that. We can make the two one. So as I have lower feelings come up and lower energies, they go right through my heart and get processed or discharged and teach me intuitively, as opposed to being stored in my body and creating pain and other things. So it was the evolution, how we're processing and storing data. Eventually, our species is gonna use more energy, less dense food, as time goes on. We're gonna feed more off the sun, so there's the sun's gonna play a big part in it because we have a sun within us.
So you did feel like you did receive some information about our future, like our evolution as to who we're becoming
Oh
as,
yeah, for sure.
and it's that we're going to evolve from not needing
Yeah,
to
some
just,
are gonna devolve, as you see, and some are gonna evolve into more light-based beings. Yep.
well, and you spoke with them about this or
Yeah, I'm just
telepathically?
like, yeah, whatever, dude. When it happens, it's happen. I mean, I'll tell people when you want me to tell people or when they ask about it, but it was just like so much. I'm like, what do you want me to do with all this? I'm like, why are you even telling me? Nobody wants to hear this. Because at the time I was, going through that where I'm trying to talk, and it wasn't being received well.
Yeah.
But yeah, definitely a being that's going to eat more energy and light and sustain itself more that way than on the dense heaviness, because a lot of the food and a lot of the things that we're used to are not going to be here the way it is now. Put
Right.
it that way. And we're seeing it now with the switch to artificial meat and artificial food and to replace the food supply. There's going to be other things that happen eventually in the future. And some beings are going to go more into that ascended state and use more light energy. And the way I kind of tell people is like when you fast a bit and then you eat a meal, you're so thankful
Mhm.
and it keeps you fuller longer. And it's kind of like that, where you're going to need less food, put it that way.
With the experiences you've had in your life now, do you have a fear of death at all?
I don't. I have a fear of leaving people behind. I wouldn't say fear. I would say I don't want to leave people behind. I don't want to leave yet, but for whatever's coming, no, I have no fear. Um,
Right. Because
None whatsoever.
you know in your heart that the experience you had was a true experience. It wasn't a figment of your imagination or hallucination or a dream.
Oh, yeah, absolutely. Or I wouldn't have the hundreds of clients who have had miraculous healings and took their glasses and okay, I don't need my glasses anymore. I had a
Wow.
woman who emailed me from one podcast and she said, I had this going on in my digestive system and I was told to touch the screen and I did and you healed me and I still have that message. And I was like, well, I didn't do it. I'm like, this is
Huh.
an action of your faith. You're connecting to something you're already a part of. And
Right.
that's the big thing. It's like we're all a part of this already. This system is for all of us. We had an experience being human, and now we return to being love, our identity.
Right. Where do people find you to get information about you and work with you and those types of things?
You can get a hold of me through my site, trinityquantumhealth.com. I also have a Facebook page, and I forgot to share my I am experience. Did I? No, I don't think I
No,
did.
you didn't, but you can. Yeah, you can just.
Do we still have time?
Yeah, I got lots of time.
Okay. So that one was a biggie. Because I'm driving home from work. I'm beating myself up. My family thinks I'm nuts. I'm crying and laughing at work. All this stuff is just coming down on me, and I'm beating myself up, being hard on myself for not being a good enough man and all this stuff. And all of a sudden, this voice shows up as I'm driving to my right and starts telling me all the wonderful things I've done for people and how loved I am by all these people and all these beautiful things. And I'm like, whoa. And at the time, I'm still trying to shut out that interference that I was talking about because I thought I was being haunted. And then it switched to realizing it's happening through me, not to me. So I'm like, who are you? But the voice was much more solid, much more concrete, very different than hearing, what I was hearing at the time. So that's what caused me to ask, who are you? And the voice said, I am. And at the time, I had never heard this expression, never religious, never went to church, didn't know what it was, what it meant. So the voice says, I am. My response, I am who? Voice says, I am the second time. And I said, yeah, I know that. I am who? And then third time, I am. And it was like all of a sudden, every emotion I ever had in my life ran through me at the same time, but separately. And I still can't explain it. It happened all at the same time, but I felt them all separately. And it was like somebody just rewound one of those old movie reels. And it was like bing, 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 bing. And I just burst out crying. I had to pull the car over. I was crying and crying and crying. And that moment changed me a lot. Uh, and it
How long
definitely
how long ago was
some
that?
that was probably like 48 now. That was over 10 years ago.
Okay.
Yeah.
So you and so you're driving, you have this overwhelming I am.
Yeah, right
Was
after
it
I'm being
audible?
hard on myself. It was audible. Yeah, it was right to the right. I mean, you could say it was almost in my glove compartment. That was my burning glove compartment moment, as opposed
Mhm.
to the burning bush. But yeah, it was to my right and it was crystal clear. Now, when I would hear spirits and stuff like that, it would be whispery, be hard.
Okay.
I'd have to focus.
Mhm.
This was crystal clear, never dropped off. Started telling me how beautiful I was and all these, and I could feel the emotions start to come up as it's speaking to me.
Wow.
Um, all these things, and I'm surprised by what it's saying. And naturally, I'd never heard that phrase "I am" before ever.
And it's a huge phrase. I mean, it's said all the time. Like you hear
Hmm.
this I am, right? Um,
Like I
and you
said, I basically thought if there was a God, he didn't like me. You know?
yeah. Well, you I think you've changed your mindset on that at this point
Oh yeah.
with the amount of things that have broken wide open for you. It all started at the age of 4. I think what happens is some people when they go through an experience like that, they come back and they're forever changed. They just don't know it because you've tapped into something that not everyone taps into. I think a lot of us do. I think probably everybody does, but a lot of it's probably near the end of our life for a majority of
Hmm.
people, right? You see people on their deathbed and they just kind of get this ease about them. There's like this, and you're like, you're not even there. You're thinking you're in and out, right? At that point.
Yeah.
And so, um, but some people like yourself get it at a young age, and it's like you're gonna live a life doing this. Like you have no choice at that point. And that's something I often see are people they try to live their life normal, but it keeps coming back, and you're like, okay, you
Yeah.
can either fight it or you can work with it, and obviously working with it's the way to do it, right?
I tried to straddle two worlds for a long time and it just wasn't happening. It was like either I'm going to embrace this and put my full self into it or it's going to make me crazy. And
Yeah,
it was at that point before I started to really embrace it. It was like it was too much to hold inside.
yeah. No, I mean it's great
And
that
I
you.
also I had to get to the point where I'm like I had to not care. People resonate and they want to hear it, cool. If they don't, cool. But it took me a while to get to that point too, to where I was comfortable enough to say, hey, if you want to hear it, cool. If not, cool.
I think that about myself with the work I'm doing with the podcast, to be honest with you, because sometimes I go, oh, I'm going to put this information out there, and some people are going to think it's kind of out there. And then I'm like, well, why do I care? Like, I shouldn't care about that because I obviously have a belief system in it, or I obviously have some feeling towards it. And I feel like I'm doing some kind of work with this. So, and then I don't think everyone has to know. I don't think it's my place to say that someone should believe something. It's just like that's because then you're just doing the same thing where you're trying to
Oh,
push your
definitely
belief
not.
system, right? So
Yeah.
it's got to be there for people when they're ready, for when it makes
I
sense.
would say for me, the takeaway was creator was an embodiment and it was a feeling of love. And I understood that, okay, without my trauma, I don't have free will
Mhm.
to embody that love. And it was really about me gaining free will over my trauma, over how the world was pushing and pulling me through my trauma and past identities, and embodying that frequency and that feeling again. And as long as I'm in this frequency and I'm good with my creator, I'm good everywhere else, no matter what noise somebody makes. As long as I'm feeling this
Wow.
feeling, I'm okay.
Yeah, I love that. What the last question I always ask everybody, and it's a simple one, but it's to, I would just say to you, and I'm sure you work with your heart, right? So what comes to you first when I say, why are we here? What's our purpose of being here? Our totality of who we are. Why are we here?
I would say to experience, it's experience being human, but it was because we could learn things that we weren't able to learn as energy in situations and experience with forgetfulness. But the ultimate goal is obviously to remember that we're all the same energy, experiencing itself in many ways. For me, I firmly believe creator is still evolving. And when we look back at some of the works where he says, hey, I'm not going to flood the world again, creator is still learning through us as a being, as an entity, whatever you want to refer to it as. Black and white are both part of it, and there's creator is still evolving itself as we're evolving. So I believe the whole purpose is experience, because creator wanted to have a reflection of self.
I love that.
And that speaks to everyone you come in contact with being part of creator. They're going to come and go, but ultimately the love story to have is between ourself and creation, not to close ourselves off, because it's everywhere. I don't have to get it just from this one source or that one source. It's literally everywhere. So at the end of the day, I'm having a love story with creation. The characters are part of that creator. They're coming and going, and they can share it with me, but they don't control that experience.
Thanks for sharing your experience today. Is there anything else you want to share with the audience before we end it?
No, I think we covered a lot. I would say it's a lot of it is about making the conscious and subconscious one, so we have control over our systems, and we stop allowing the world to program us and tell us who we are. We were already love. I was supposed to be human. When I start speaking that into my system, it remembers it, because it's the word of creator is encoded into my DNA, just waiting to be enlightened.
From what I remember too, you're part of a book that's being created.
Yeah, the neardeathinstitute.com. There's a book they called titled Death. It has a bunch of stories, not only mine, but I believe like 12 others that are really amazing. You can go to neardeathinstitute.com, and some of my stories are in there, some of my struggles. But ultimately, man, I overcame with their help. And then part of my journey was to show others, hey, you can do this too. Hey, you can do this too.
Right. I want to take a moment to say thanks for everyone who's been tuning in to the podcast. Thanks for sharing. Please like, share, and subscribe as usual, so that I can get people like Steven on, who's been awesome. Thank you so much, Steven, for coming on and talking to us today. I know that you've done this before, but each time, hopefully, you get a little more out of it, and we get to share
Hopefully I
more of
kept
your
it
story.
together for you.
No, you did. It was perfect. Thank you so much. And until next time, we'll see you on the next episode of Soul Inspired.